I'll take a moment to introduce myself. So my name is Jeanette Gautreau, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Brunswick Multicultural Council, and I will be your host over the course of this session. Donc, bonjour à tous, merci de vous joindre à nous pour cette session, cet avant-midi, une première discussion avec les panélistes de trois partis majeurs des candidats fédéraux sur la croissance démographique et l'immigration ici au Nouveau-Brunswick. Before I introduce our partners and panelists, I'd also like to remind everybody that this event is bilingual and the interpretation is available. So you can scroll to the bottom right of your screen on the interpretation button and choose a language of your choice. The session, as you heard, is also being recorded. If you do not consent to this recording, please advise one of the NBMC staff in the chat so that we can take that into consideration. Donc, avant de continuer, un petit rappel que cet événement est bilingue. Les questions vont être posées dans les deux langues officielles et l'interprétation est disponible. Donc, vous pouvez cliquer sur l'iconographie au bas en droit de l'écran et choisir la langue de votre choix. La session est aussi enregistrée. Si vous ne consentez pas à l'enregistrement, merci de nous aviser dans la fonction chat pour qu'on puisse le prendre en considération. Avant d'aller plus loin, je voulais aussi prendre le moment de reconnaître que nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui sur les terres non cédées des peuples Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq et Passamaquoddy, et nous leur sommes reconnaissants. Reconnaître la terre est une façon d'exprimer notre gratitude et une façon d'honorer les peuples autochtones qui vivent et travaillent sur cette terre depuis des temps immémoriaux. Il est important de comprendre la longue histoire qui nous a amenés à résider sur cette terre et d'honorer cette histoire alors que nous continuons à y accueillir de nouvelles familles et travaillons ensemble à avancer sur la voie de la réconciliation. J'aimerais aussi prendre un moment de reconnaître ceux et celles qui ont rendu cet événement possible. Surtout l'équipe du Conseil multiculturel du Nouveau-Brunswick, entre autres Rachel, Gordon, Olive, Ariane et tous les autres membres de l'équipe qui ont travaillé fort pour organiser cette journée, et nos multiples partenaires présents. I want to also thank those who made this event possible, namely the staff at the NBMC and the Brunswick Multicultural Council team, and all the partners who helped organize the event with the logistics, outreach, promotion, and the questions that we will be presenting today. These partners are the New Brunswick Business Council, the Chambers of Commerce of Moncton, of Fredericton, and of St. John, le Conseil économique du Nouveau-Brunswick, Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, l'Association francophone des municipalités du Nouveau-Brunswick, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, et la Société de l'Acadie du Nouveau-Brunswick. And of course, we want to thank the candidates who are here with us today and who are putting themselves forward for this important federal elections to shape the future of our country and our province. And now I will go on to introduce our candidates and we'll go on to the questions momentarily. We will link each of the candidates' pages in the chat as well so you can learn more about their biography and their platforms. And our candidates today are Evelyn Godfrey, NDP, candidate for the Bussisville riding. Richard Dunn, Green Party candidate for the Moncton Riverview Dieppe riding. And Jenica Atwin, Liberal Party candidate for the Fredericton riding. And as you notice, we do not have a Conservative Party candidate today. Unfortunately, we had someone lined up and due to personal medical reasons, this person could no longer attend the session this morning. We did try to reach out to multiple different candidates in the hopes that we could line someone else up. And unfortunately, because of the short notice and a tight and busy campaign schedule, we could not secure a Conservative Party candidate. But I'm sure that you can look at the different candidates' profiles on their websites, as well as listening to the English debate this evening to learn more about the Conservative platform on immigration and population growth. So thank you, Evelyn, Jenica, and Richard for taking the time to be with us this morning. A little bit of context. As you know, over the past few years, there's been a growing awareness around the important role of immigration and population growth for the prosperity of our communities. As a country and as a province, we have strong immigration goals and increasingly more newcomers are arriving and wanting to stay in our province. However, attracting newcomers to our province is only the first step. And NBMC recognizes the imperative to change the way we plan, design, and deliver social services and programs to better reflect, include, and serve the diverse population that are making up New Brunswick's communities today. We know that if we want more prosperous, safer, more accessible, connected, and welcoming spaces for all, then we need to involve a diversity of perspectives, commit to bold policies, and invest in the necessary services and supports to ensure that all can thrive and fully participate in our society. Many of you also know that New Brunswick Multicultural Council conducted this past winter its second New Conversations tour, where we heard from hundreds from around the province on the collaborative initiatives and efforts that have been made across New Brunswick to welcome newcomers in our workplaces and communities, but also of the challenges that remained for the newcomers to address the barriers to inclusion, equity, and full participation in all spheres of society. So today we're calling on our federal leaders to discuss their visions and their platform for the future of population growth and immigration in New Brunswick, and how you intend to work with your provincial partners and counterparts to enhance the wins and address the ongoing gaps. Sans plus tarder, nous allons procéder aux questions. Le format suivra ainsi. Chaque partenaire parmi nous aura l'occasion de poser une question à discuter auprès des candidats. Chaque candidat aura la chance de commencer la discussion et ensuite les autres parties pourront répondre. On demande aux candidats de maintenir leur réponse en dedans de 2-3 minutes pour assurer qu'on puisse maintenir le temps. Et je vous rappelle que ce n'est pas un débat, mais une discussion, table ronde, et on espère que vous pourrez partager vos idées de façon respectueuse. Je prendrai la liberté de vous interrompre et de couper le micro au besoin, mais je lèverai ma main comme ça pour aviser d'essayer de conclure votre réponse afin de gérer le temps. So we'll now move to the question and answer period, and a reminder that this is not a debate, but a roundtable discussion. And we ask each candidate to try to keep their answers within 2-3 minutes, and each party will have the chance to open a discussion, and then other parties will have the chance to respond. If you see my hand raised, it's an indication to try to wrap up your answer to keep within time, but I do reserve the right to politely interrupt or mute your mic if needed, just to make sure that we're maintaining time over the course of this discussion. So here we go. I'll first invite Alex Leblanc from the New Brunswick Business Council to ask the starting question.
Thank you, Jeanette, and thank you to Jenica, Richard, and Evelyn for your time today. And so I'll dive right in with my question, so there's lots to cover. New Brunswick currently has an annual immigration threshold of 6,000 people. The provincial government's population growth strategy calls for 7,500 people by 2024. But a coalition of organizations and economists and many of the organizations around in this roundtable today are calling for an increase to an annual intake of 10,000 people per year to support the labor market in New Brunswick. So will your party commit to this increase, and will you as a candidate commit to championing that increase? And what do you believe needs to happen to achieve a higher immigration targets?
Thank you, Alex. Jenica, would you like to open this discussion?
Sure. So first, just hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us and for this important discussion. I always learn something new, and I become a better advocate, I think, in the process when I learn, from the firsthand experiences and in discussions with important organizations who are doing incredible work. So thank you, Alex, for that question. Absolutely, I support, increasing that number. We know immigration is important for so many reasons, including economic growth, obviously, but also to transform and strengthen our communities, increase our diversity. So, the more the merrier, especially here in the Atlantic, absolutely. And we know in the last years before the pandemic that the government of Canada did work to increase immigration levels, reduce wait times, and build a fair system. But there's also so much work to do. And that's why these forums are so important. So I hope this is, the first of many to come. So I am, proud of the federal government's launching of the rural and northern immigration pilot, which brings new skilled newcomers to smaller communities and helps grow local economies. Also the Atlantic immigration pilot, which is now permanent. So these will all help in this aim to increase the numbers that are coming to our beautiful province. So there is a commitment in the platform to reform economic immigration programs, specifically to expand pathways to permanent residence for temporary migrant workers, former international students through the express entry point system. So that would help increase the number that's coming here to New Brunswick. 10,000, excellent target. My concerns would be around housing. We know we have a housing crisis, so that's a big piece we're going to have to work on kind of, coincidentally at the same time to ensure that, families come and have a home that they can feel comfortable in. The other piece would of course be healthcare. I've heard so many, stories for people that come and can't stay because we need access to primary care for all. So that's a big concern. So again, there's work to do that coincides with this. But absolutely, I think that, I would personally commit to having that number increase and recognize, and any support from the federal government to our provincial partners as well will be a key to making sure that happens. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Jenica. And we'll go back to the housing question in a moment as well. Richard, would you like to add something?
Sure, thank you. And just to expand on some of the points that Jenica has made, pathways are hugely important. We also need to have measures for family reunification, to support people coming together. I know there's a question coming up on students as well. When we get students here, they're already here. They understand our climate. They understand our, and also with temporary foreign workers, we have to embrace that these people are coming here and not necessarily just, for a temporary. That's the pathways that we have to embrace. So if someone is going to live here for a period of time, 3-4 years, or they're going to work here, we really need to find ways to adopt them as Canadian citizens over time, so that they can become part of our culture and our society, because they are already productive members. And we also have to find ways, advocate for them to be able to vote as permanent residents, so that they can have a voice. If we can take their tax dollars, we can allow them to vote as well.
Thank you very much, Richard. And to your point, we will touch also on the student question momentarily. Evelyn.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for inviting me here today. I just want to say a bit about my background, because I have direct experience in this subject. I'm not an immigrant. I was born in Canada, and I grew up in Beauséjour in the riding where I'm standing. But my mother is Asian, and she came to Canada as an immigrant in the early 1960s. And my mother and my grandparents lived with us in Sackville, New Brunswick, in the 1970s. I have some perspective on being an immigrant in New Brunswick from my mother and my grandparents' experience. For the past 30 years, I've been living in England, where I've been very active on the subject of immigration policy in the Cooperative Party and the Labour Party. And I have been active in supporting refugees and migrants in a cooperative in England. So I've had some very sharp-end experience in the reality of immigration in the Canadian immigration, the current Canadian immigration system, and the past, and also in Britain. And there are serious issues that still need to be resolved in New Brunswick and in Canada with the federal immigration that's been going on. And if I would certainly be working with people who are involved in the program. I've been talking to immigrants in New Brunswick, and what they are encountering is not what they were promised in all the recruitment to this province. So I do have extensive thoughts and ideas on the subject, but it is not a matter of numbers and quotas, in my opinion. There are a lot of fundamental problems with the current immigration system and the whole welcoming and integration that people have here in New Brunswick. And the bottom line problem is still the same as when I was young and why I left New Brunswick. The economy here needs a lot of work so that people can actually stay in the province and get jobs.
Thank you, Evelyn. And we'll touch more on some of those economic imperatives as well. On to the next question, and Richard, you pointed to international students. So I will now invite John Wishart from the Chamber of Commerce of the Greater Moncton to ask the following question.
Thanks very much, Jeanette, and good morning, everyone. Glad to join you. You're right, international students, I think we can all agree they're a critical piece to newcomer attraction and retention. Yet several federal programs exclude them from funding to support internships and summer work. We ran into this summer when we launched a program called Future Link with some of our chamber colleagues, international students. There was no funding for them to take part in this. What is your party's position on expanding access to federal income support programs to increase the number of international students for on-the-job experiences? And more generally, what is your party's position on doing more to help retain international students in our province?
Thank you very much, John. And Richard, you raised the question, so I'm going to give you first chance to answer.
Alors, merci beaucoup. Nous avons rencontré avec les étudiants à l'Université de Moncton depuis quelques jours. Ils ont identifié que ça prend les liens, la collaboration avec les municipalités, la province et le gouvernement fédéral. Donc, c'est vraiment dans un esprit collaborateur. Oui, ça prend des programmes comme tels. Les employeurs nous disent qu'ils ont des difficultés d'embaucher des personnes et à la même temps, on a des personnes qui veulent travailler qui sont pas capables parce que les programmes ne les incluent pas. Alors, il faut vraiment lier les deux choses ensemble pour avoir le manœuvre qu'on a besoin. Alors, nous donne l'appui pour continuer les retenir et l'attirer des étudiants et particulièrement dans les institutions postsecondaires.
Merci, Richard. Jenica, would you like to add?
Great. Yes. I think what first comes to mind to me as well is that we often have this kind of stereotype of what an international student is. And I hear that a lot, and I think, we miss the boat on understanding that many are parents as well. You've got to have income streams coming in. You got to make sure you have security. Again, housing is an issue. So there's so many things I think we need to add to the conversation around international students to ensure we really have a holistic wraparound approach to ensuring that they have everything they need while they're here. And then again, those pathways to be streamlined to stay and to grow and to, have families as well here. And family reunification is a huge piece of that. So that's just something that I hear a lot. I'd say up to 50% of our case files are around immigration, and many are inquiries around international students and wanting to stay longer. So that's an important piece. I will say that the platform doesn't have a lot around this issue. I hope to be a loud voice to ensure that it's included more often in the conversation. So again, the platform will go back on building on the economic mobility pathways pilot, working with employers and communities across Canada to welcome 2,000 skilled refugees to fill labor shortages in demand sectors, say around healthcare, for example. But we know we would love for things like the Canada Summer Jobs Program to be opened up. There was a little bit of movement around how many hours international students could work on campus, out of the experience of COVID, as well as there's been some movement. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see some of these changes moving forward. But it takes important discussions like these to really have accurate pictures of what we're really experiencing on the ground. I will say when Minister Mendicino visited, it was a great opportunity. We held a roundtable at the University of New Brunswick to really talk about some of these issues. And, the minister was very open to understanding that there needs to be a bit more more of a human perspective on some of the decisions that are made, on some of the strict regulations around international students and their participation in the community. Obviously, as well, love, the permanent residents should vote. I believe in that too. Thanks, Richard, for bringing that up. But, a big piece is always ensuring that there's an accelerated pathway for international students. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this particular piece. But again, I do see that willingness for change. And so some of the silver linings of COVID is that, the conversation seems to be moving a lot quicker than it was before. So I'm hopeful we'll see more on this, but there's not a whole lot of support at the moment. So again, let's work together on this. So thanks so much for that question.
Thank you, Jenica. Evelyn, I'll give you a chance to respond as well. I just want to say that I got notice from the interpreters. I know you're all trying to keep your answers short, and I really appreciate that. To try to slow down just a little bit for the interpretation so they can keep up with your brilliant answers. Evelyn, please go on. Okay,
yeah. So I'm teaching at Mount Allison University. So my profession is in higher education, I know that this is it's a market. It's the money of the international students at all the universities, especially English-speaking universities, whether in Canada, the United States, or Britain, are competing for now. And the cost of higher education is really astronomical now. The NDP platform has to do with student loan remission, because it's no good people getting into this much debt when there's a shortage of professional graduate jobs out there. at the end of the day. And that comes back to the economy needing to be sorted out. What I would say about international students is we're already only getting in the richest people in the world. It's a way of taking a shortcut through the immigration system. If you've got the money, then you can come in as an international student. I don't think that this is, as a socialist, I have to say that I don't think that this is a good way to proceed. And it's just a very minor thing that once you've let in these very wealthy people, that you let them do a bit of how many hours here or how many hours there of work. And the fact is, if they don't find New Brunswick an attractive place to stay and live and raise a family and so on, they are going to, once they've finished their qualification, they are going to move to a different part of Canada. So I would have thought that what we need to be addressing here is the high cost of higher education and student loans, and the fact that people can come in through the immigration system. If they've got a lot of money, they can come in as students, and how that's not an equitable way to be attracting people to this country.
Thank you, Evelyn, for that answer. Just a little reminder that if any of the attendees do want to ask a question or have commentaries, you can write them in the chat, and we'll try to pick up on those if you have any responses to any of the answers from the candidates as well. Jenica, you mentioned that housing being a big question, and you made that link with the international students as well. And we know that this is a particular issue in areas where we have university and college campuses. So I will now pass on the following question to Dan Murphy from the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick to ask a question pertaining to this.
Merci, Jeanette, and thank you all for being here today. So as Jeanette mentioned, and as has been picked up already, affordable housing is on the minds of many New Brunswickers, municipalities, private organizations, really everyone. If we're looking from the Acadian Peninsula to St. Andrews, Saint-Quentin, Sussex, our three urban centers alike, it's on everyone's mind. So I guess what I'm curious about today is that if elected, what do you and your party plan on doing to increase affordable housing and available housing as well to everyone in our province?
Jenica, do you want to start with that answer, please?
Sure. So, I mean, excellent question. As you said, it's come up already a few times, so we really need to address this. And the ongoing housing crisis has an impact, obviously, on retention for newcomers. As you're mentioning, Evelyn, we need people to stay. It's great to come and experience what our universities have to offer, but we want people to stay in New Brunswick. So the more people we welcome, they need a place to call home and feel comfortable and safe and secure. Accessible housing as well for anyone living with a disability, larger housing for bigger families. So all of these things need to really be discussed at length, and we need to find solutions for them. And I will say again, a silver lining of the pandemic, it seems like a lot of people are talking about housing because we needed to be home to be safe. So there's a lot of light, I think, at the end of this tunnel, and I'm really proud to see so much in the Liberal platform to support this. So there's pieces on investing $4 billion in a new housing accelerator fund, which will grow the annual housing supply in the country's largest cities every year. We also need rural housing issues, so that's another piece I'd like to push on from rural New Brunswick. So it does create a target of 100,000 new middle-class homes by 2024-25. So there's also application-based funding that will support municipalities as well, so that they can grow their housing supply faster than the historical average. We know supply is a big issue here. Increasing densification, speed up approval times. That's another piece. Things are very slow in developing. Tackle NIMBYism, establish inclusionary zoning bylaws, encourage public transit-oriented development. That's the other piece. Transportation has to be in the same conversation with housing. So this fund will support a wide range of eligible municipal investments. So there's, again, some really hopeful things. Also, again, speeding up the wait times it takes to build more homes by investing in e-permitting technology. So there's little pieces of the puzzle that are going to help speed this along. Working with municipalities, I think all levels of government need to come together on this. Identify vacant, underused property that should be converted to housing on the principle of use it or lose it. Double the first-time home buyers tax credit from $5,000 to $10,000. So allowing more people to become first-time home buyers as well to get out of that rental market. Permanently increase funding to the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. It's a total of $2.7 billion over 4 years, more than doubling its current allocation. So there's lots of commitments here. So I really feel this is a top priority. I know our mayor in Fredericton, this is her #1 issue as well. So I'm confident we're going to work together and we're going to tackle this issue for at least Fredericton, but we want to do it province-wide and obviously in the rest of Canada as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shanika. On to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, apart from healthcare, affordable housing is the main policy in my campaign. It is a serious problem in Sackville, for example, with Mount Allison here, with the students. And what has happened over the years is that a lot of properties and rental accommodation has been bought up by private landlords and built and developed by private landlords who are not maintaining their properties, and they are taking profit instead. I think the solution is more cooperative housing. And that's something that's common in the United States and other parts of Canada, but we don't see it so much here in New Brunswick. And I think that having a lot more cooperative housing would be a quick solution to the affordable housing crisis. I mean, obviously, building more isn't a quick solution, and it requires investment, and it ends up involving private owners as well. But if there could be a federal, provincial partnership to encourage more cooperative ownership of housing, I think that would help address the issue. As in terms of federal policy platforms, I know you probably have heard Jagmeet Singh has been talking about 75% capital gains tax, which is aimed at the very high end of the market, the millions and millions of dollar homes that are now common in Vancouver, for example. And what that would do is bring in revenue to the federal government that they can then use in programs to help with the lower end of the market, of the housing market. So I'm entirely in favor of this capital gains tax that really is aimed at property speculators rather than people who own one main residence.
Thank you, Evelyn. Richard, on to you.
Thank you. Both Evelyn and Jenica have raised some terrific points, so I'm not going to repeat those. Limiting foreign investment and ending predatory practices is a big part of this. The co-op housing, I want to talk a little bit more about the financing end of it. I actually work in economic development, so I'm in discussions with developers regularly, many of whom want to create affordable housing. When they go to their bank, the bank actually talks them out of it, and they end up scaling up their projects to be more high end. And that's what we've been seeing here in Moncton in some cases. What we need is to support our financial institutions with programs. Krista, you would know about this, or well, both all the business people know about the small business financing program. That's something like that could extend to housing if you're meeting the criteria around affordable housing, and the federal government is able to back a program like this with our major financial institutions. You will get some uptake on making proper developments that satisfy those requirements. Similarly, with CMHC, the Crown Corporation for Mortgage Financing, their wait times are far too excessive for private developers to even contemplate. We need to speed up the process. It has to run at the speed of business. The programs are good. They have to be accessible and efficient.
Thank you very much, Richard. I think it's fair to say that the housing conversation is one that's going to continue on both provincially and federally. So we really appreciate the answers that you've provided. On va changer de picot un petit peu puis parler d'immigration francophone. La prochaine question sera posée par Alexandre Sédic-Doucet, le président de la Société de l'Acadie du Nouveau-Brunswick.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. Juste faire sortir avant que je commence, vous m'entendez bien?
Oui.
OK, parfait. Pour commencer, l'article 95 de la loi constitutionnelle de 1867 prévoit que l'immigration est un champ de compétences partagé entre les provinces et le fédéral. Le Québec, en raison de son régime linguistique particulier, a une entente avec le gouvernement fédéral depuis de nombreuses années pour davantage d'autonomie en immigration. Puisque le Nouveau-Brunswick est l'autre seule province canadienne à avoir un statut particulier au niveau linguistique, quelle est la position de votre parti à donner plus d'autonomie à notre province au niveau de l'immigration?
Merci, Alexandre. Evelyn, you can start answering this question.
Sorry, was it me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't hear you. More autonomy, well, I think that there are a lot of programs, there's a whole series of programs now that the provinces are taking more of a part in immigration than ever before. In terms of bilingualism, I mean, the fact is, if you look at the census statistics, it's the French-speaking population of New Brunswick, the Acadian population, who tend to speak English, and not the other way around. So what we would have to be looking at is encouraging bilingual immigrants, I would have thought, rather than solely French-speaking immigrants, because what they would find when they get here is that in practice and living in New Brunswick, it tends to be that you do speak English to function. That's in practical reality. That's how it's worked out, that you have 90% of the English-speaking people only speaking English. And so I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to target immigration recruitment according to whether you speak only French. And in countries, for example, former colonial, French colonial countries. But I certainly think that there is a lot more in terms of partnership that could be done between New Brunswick and the federal government.
Thank you, Evelyn. Richard, on to you.
Merci. Donc, je suis d'accord avec Evelyn que c'est très, très difficile quand les immigrants uniquement francophones viennent dans notre région, ils trouvent que c'est difficile de communiquer leurs besoins avec la communauté. Mais je pense qu'il y a des opportunités de continuer particulièrement avec les entrepreneuriats. On avait des programmes provinciaux, ça fait des années, pour les entrepreneurs spécifiquement. On avait des défis avec le programme, mais c'est dans le milieu de créer des entreprises ici à Nouveau-Brunswick, ça prend de l'innovation, ça prend l'inclusion et nous avons besoin de continuer nos efforts pour combattre le racisme et la discrimination entre tout, que ce soit basé sur langue ou culture. Ça prend les efforts pour accueillir tous les immigrants, que ce soit francophones, anglophones, bilingues. Alors, je veux voir que le programme francophone ait réussi à continuer, ainsi que les autres programmes aussi. Mais j'aimerais voir les collaborations avec l'université aussi pour que ça puisse être intégré dans la communauté dans plus grande échelle.
Merci beaucoup, Richard. Et finalement, Jenica.
Merci Alex pour cette question. Je crois que c'est une excellente idée de donner plus d'autonomie à notre province au niveau de l'immigration et que nous nous dirigeons dans cette direction. L'actuel ministre de l'immigration, que j'ai dit déjà, était de passage dans ma circonscription la semaine où il a invité, en collaboration avec le FCFA, les résidents temporaires et l'étudiant international d'expression française, invités à se prévaloir de voies vers la résidence permanente jusqu'au mois de novembre. Je crois que c'est un excellent programme et qu'il faudra continuer à le développer et s'assurer que la particularité du Nouveau-Brunswick comme province bilingue, fièrement, se traduit dans notre stratégie d'immigration. Je suis heureuse de dire qu'une proposition visant à contrer la perte du poids démographique des francophones au Canada en adaptant une stratégie nationale ambitieuse visant à favoriser l'immigration francophone hors de Québec est comprise dans notre plateforme. Aussi, on a besoin de la modernisation des lois des langues officielles et aussi, juste quand on fait la continuation le retour de normalcy après le COVID-19, on a besoin d'utiliser un point de vue linguistique aussi et c'est tellement important pour moi et notre équipe libérale aussi. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Janica. The next question will go back in English and we'll invite David Duplessis from the St. John Chamber of Commerce. And this question has come from a few different members around the role that municipalities have to play in the immigration process.
First of all, thank you, Jeanette, and thank you to the Multicultural Association for organizing this wonderful event. Thank you as well to all of the candidates for taking time out of your busy schedules to assist us in understanding the situation a little better. As well, welcome to my cohorts in Moncton and Fredericton Chambers of Commerce, Krista and John. Always a pleasure to see you and everyone. The question here is, what mechanisms do you plan to offer municipalities that would enable them to plan to welcome and retain newcomers? That's one of our biggest challenges. And does your party plan to put in place a municipal nominee program that would allow local communities to sponsor immigrant candidates?
Thank you very much, David. Jenica, you can answer the first question.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais répondre en français aussi. Les municipalités sont des joueurs essentiels dans le succès de nos politiques migratoires et doivent pouvoir occuper un rôle qui reflète réellement celui-ci. Il y a plusieurs rôles que les municipalités peuvent jouer et plusieurs façons dont le gouvernement fédéral peut les appuyer. Comme mentionné précédemment, le fait de les appuyer avec la construction des logements abordables est un exemple des mesures qui aura un impact direct sur le
and something that would have a direct impact to
immigrer dans les communautés et municipalités. Et je suis d'accord, d'un programme devrait être mis en œuvre afin que les municipalités puissent parrainer des candidats et candidates à l'immigration, car elles sont le premier pays de gouvernement qui est très conscient des besoins de leur région. Alors, the municipalities obviously have such a huge role to play. They are always, as we say, the closest to our constituents, closest to people on the ground. So it's really, again, we need to see collaboration between all levels of government because each one has its own unique needs and its own goals to set. So absolutely, we have to be partners. And the federal government does have a role to play in supporting their initiatives as well. So this is a great question. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Jenica. Richard.
So working with a municipality, that's my regular job. We have done some things I think that have been very successful for the immigrant community, particularly around job fairs and job matching. So bringing employers and immigrants together because they don't have the networks of professionals as they arrive. So that's a really big part for helping them build roots in the community and getting stabilized. But more than that, we have a very successful local immigration partnership here in the Moncton region in particular. I know they exist in other regions of New Brunswick as well, bringing all stakeholders to the table. So yes, the municipality has a huge role to play, leading by example, helping settlement agencies welcome newcomers when they arrive, making sure that they are aware of municipal programming. I'll come back to anti-racism and anti-discriminatory practices, another area where all levels of government need to lead by example and to do more to have them functioning in a community without fear of any type of discrimination. So yes, important role for municipalities, but again, collaborative effort on all parts, and there are many things that we can do to grow those relationships.
Thank you very much, Richard. And finally, Evelyn.
So the current community sponsorship scheme has applied mainly to refugees, and it's been based around charities fundraising in order to get the money that the IRCC requires for an individual or a family to come over to Canada. And I've noticed recently that interest in that and has waned in the past couple of years. It was very high in 2015, 2016, and now I think the public, in terms of charitable donations, have been tapped out in terms of how much money people are willing to give for community sponsorship. So I actually think municipal involvement is absolutely the way forward, and it's a fantastic idea. I was never keen on the idea of charity and sponsorship for immigrants, even for refugees. So I think the municipal participation and partnership is absolutely the way forward, and at the end of the day, in practice, could and should replace the idea of charitable fundraising in community sponsorship.
Thank you, Evelyn. A couple of questions have come up in the chat around, processing timelines, delays in processing immigration statuses, and we know that this has been a particular challenge during the pandemic. So I'll now invite Krista Ross to ask the next question, President of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, and thanks a lot, Jeanette, for including us in this with NBMC and with our chamber colleagues. You gave me a mic, so I'm going to say one thing before I ask my question.
Of course.
I know that Constantine Pissarros is on the call, and I want to say congratulations. He was named to the Order of New Brunswick this morning for his visionary work as a champion and advocate for multiculturalism, immigration, inclusion, and human rights. So I know you're on the call with us this morning, and I want to give you a big shout out. Perfectly appropriate in this audience today, and so glad you could join us this morning. So on to my question. Application processing times within IRCC were a major barrier for newcomers, even pre-2020 and pre-pandemic, but they've been exacerbated by the pandemic. What investments are needed in technology or in human resources to deal with the backlog and to get applications processed in a reasonable amount of time?
Thank you very much, Krista, and I want to echo the congratulations to Dr. Pissarros. Richard, would you like to start with the answer?
Sure, thank you. I think that it's important to underscore that the federal public service did not lose any workers during the pandemic. Everyone was given job security, and yet why were these backlogs, not just with IRCC, but across the board? People were given opportunities to work from home. I find it disappointing that we didn't more quickly get people up and running and even producing more than, in an office environment. You're taking away some of the barriers to getting work done. So I think that it's a culture shift. It's a rapid culture shift, and we need to find ways to include those people who are in a work from home environment, and to, understanding the realities that, with childcare and everything else that's going on, we still need to have productivity in our federal public service. So whether that means ensuring that the expectations of the job are still being met, that's step number one. I think there's been a little gradual decline in what we've come to expect from our public service. And we need to get back to where we were pre-pandemic, whatever the new reality looks like. And we do need to leverage technological and innovative solutions to our advantage, because we don't have to go from place to place to have a meeting anymore. We should have more efficiencies. We should be able to get through these backlogs quicker than before, not slower. So that's where we need to start. We need to look at the processes and to make sure that they match up with what with what the needs are.
Thank you very much, Richard. On to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, processing times are just a serious impediment to immigration. And if you can look at the IRCC processing times for any particular sort of visa, and you see some shocking numbers of months, 3 years, 2 years to wait for a visa, even for people in refugee situations who are in dangerous, terrible situations at the moment. To ask somebody like that to wait for 3 years to have their visa processed is absurd. In Canada, there isn't the angry public opposition to immigration that, for example, I see in England. So I don't see there being a political problem here in terms of investment in IRCC. It's certainly not a political issue like there is in Britain, for example. So I think we are in a position to invest more. The federal government does need to invest more, and that is what it requires. It needs manpower. They need to hire the staff in order to actually deal with this. So I would say there needs to be more funding for the IRCC to get the people, to get more people working, not just the existing staff, to actually deal with this. And Canada could be more proactive, if you like, in dealing with the situation, because there is an international problem in terms of dealing with especially immigration of refugees. There's people waiting in refugee camps in Africa and in the Middle East. UNHCR camps who are waiting literally for years in terrible conditions, who are desperate to get out. And I think Canada could be doing a lot more in terms of working with the UNHCR to go in there and process people on the ground in the camps in Africa and in the Middle East.
Thank you, Evelyn and Jenica.
Thank you. And I mean, I totally understand the frustration. Again, it was to my surprise that over 50% of our case files in a member of parliament office would be in processing immigration cases and in dealing with the backlog as well, and helping to get status updates, so, but I will say just, the public service works really hard. I know that it's volumes. You'd be surprised with the high volume of inquiries that come in. But again, we need to speed things out. There does need to be improvements in the system. I know there is talks about a new technology system to potentially streamline things. There's been a lot of lessons learned throughout the pandemic as well. And to your point, Richard, absolutely working from home, there should be some efficiencies in that process, but also there's a lot of issues around confidentiality, along security of documents, things like that. There was already a shift we saw during the pandemic where there was not everything had to be done by mail. The hard copies didn't have to necessarily be put in. So there's some flexibility now. And again, we've really been working with the minister's office to increase that level of flexibility, because, again, it's human beings we're talking about. It's not everything is going to be black and white and easy to make those determinations. And something I really push for is even just on the websites to have accurate wait time. So it's listed right now, usually about 6 months. And we know you can wait up to 21 months, for example. So at least if people had realistic expectations, I think it would also help the work of my constituency staff as well, because, we get phone calls all the time with people who are in absolutely heartbreaking, devastating circumstances. And, we do all we can, as well as a public service. So, hopefully that a new technology will help. Hopefully they will have new hiring streams to, reinforce the public service to ensure that there's more workers focused on this. And just again, it might take this time to mention that we never know when a humanitarian crisis is going to hit our country or the globe. And right now, I know there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to resettle Afghan citizens as well. So it takes so much to make all of this work and the wheels to turn the way they need to. And certainly there's lots of frustration, but the lessons are being learned. I think there's consensus across the country, so many MPs from all parties. This is a nonpartisan issue, as you mentioned, Evelyn. So I think we're going to start to see some movement on this. But of course, it's never fast enough, because these are human lives we're talking about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it speak for anyone who is in the waiting process, that we do hope that we find those efficiencies and can accelerate some of those application processes as well. So the last question that I'll pose from the panelists will come from Gaëtan Thomas. Donc, j'invite Gaëtan d'allumer votre vidéo, votre micro. Et sinon, je peux poser... Vous êtes là, Gaëtan? OK. Mais sinon, OK. Là, vous voilà.
Oui, j'ai pas la question. Je sais
Je vais
pas.
l'envoyer dans le chat.
Hein? Je l'ai dans le chat. OK. Est-ce que c'est la reconnaissance?
Oui, c'est la reconnaissance des acquis.
OK. Merci, excusez-moi.
C'est pas grave.
La reconnaissance des titres de compétences a longtemps été identifiée comme un obstacle à la réussite des nouveaux arrivants au Canada. Comment le gouvernement fédéral peut-il travailler avec les provinces et les organismes provinciaux d'accréditation pour atténuer ce problème?
Merci beaucoup, Gaëtan. Evelyn.
Yes, absolutely. The credential issue is a major problem, and you know, I'm an archaeologist, and I work in looking at human migration and historical migration over time. And I can tell you the way New Brunswick was built up in the 18th and 19th century was just by bringing over people without checking any educational credentials. And what you needed was a large volume of a variety of people who were going to come here and build up the economy here. And making people jump through all these hoops now is I think detrimental to trying to actually build up the economy in New Brunswick. We're insisting that they have recognized university degrees and high qualifications, and then they come here and you see there's a mismatch between what we're demanding of people, that they prove that they have all these qualifications, and the sort of jobs, if there are jobs available, the sort of jobs that are available. And once they get here, they're certainly not willing. If you've got a university degree or a master's degree, you don't want to then be working in the fish processing plant in Cap-Pelé. So, and that's why we're struggling to retain people, and why we have these issues with people integrating into the community. So I think we do need to rethink this entire idea of credentials, and how so many barriers have now been built up to immigration. Even when my mother came over here in the 1960s, okay, she came in as a student, but when my grandparents came after her, they were still just allowing people to turn up and claim landed immigrant status the way it had been for a very long time. That was in the late 1960s. We've created, I think, far too many barriers now to people coming over, and it's the educational qualification and the credential thing that's really at the heart of that. That's we're not getting the numbers of people, and there's a mismatch between the people we're getting and potential jobs here.
Thank you, Evelyn. On to you, Jenica.
Great, thank you. You know, when I was first elected as a member of parliament, I was shocked to learn about how prevalent this issue actually is. You know, you hear lots of kind of jokes about it offhand, but it's not a joke. It's serious that there are so many individuals who come with years and years, decades even of experience, say in the healthcare field, for example, where we have a health crisis in New Brunswick, and to not have their credentials recognized is frustrating. It's demoralizing. You know, I've also learned about a lot about mental health that can actually decline after coming to Canada because of some of these issues. So it's a serious problem. Obviously, we have standards in Canada that we want to uphold, but there's got to be a better process for recognizing at least that experience level that people will bring. Again, particularly around healthcare, because that's just the number one issue that I'm hearing at every doorstep. So, you know, very serious. So there is a commitment in the platform to continue to work with the provinces, territories, and regulatory bodies to improve that foreign credential recognition system. again, it's got to be a lot faster because we're losing talent. We're losing the retention race. And many people are maybe landing in New Brunswick and then heading elsewhere. So it's definitely an issue, and it's been brought to me by many unions, by many organizations, by many employers. So we've got to get a handle on this one. So very happy to see it reflected in the platform, and I will certainly work with our partners here in the city of Fredericton to ensure that we can speed up that process and have people join the workforce in a meaningful way with the skills that they bring with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenica. Richard, last word.
All right, thank you. I echo what Jenica just said. It is not a black and white issue like a lot of these things that we're talking about. Foreign skills recognition, having sat on the province's population growth secretariat some years ago, it is a question of health and safety. In the healthcare field, as Jenica pointed out, tremendous need, but how do you match the high degree of skills that we come to expect and that we're funding? So and we have to have mechanisms, and it's a collaborative effort, like everything we've talked about, to understand where they're coming from, what and how they can apply those skills in it is a different environment. So culturally we have to make allowances for that. But there are a lot of recommendations that have been made. The similar commitments are found in our platform as well. But we do have to, and we keep talking about it, but there does have to be partnerships across universities and across accrediting bodies that have international recognition, so that they have mobility too, not just to go from wherever they are to Canada, but that it increases their standards across the international community.
Thank you very much, Richard. Unfortunately, we're at time. It's 11:59 and we had booked until noon. Obviously, this discussion could go on forever. I even had to cut my own question from the list, let alone those in the chat. So I do encourage all the participants to reach out to your local MPs. If you have further questions around their platform, that's what they're there for. And we have some important decisions to make as we head to the polls on September 20th. I want to give a huge thank you to Richard, Evelyn, Jenica for taking the time to be with us this morning. A tremendous thank you to all the partners, New Brunswick Business Council, Conseil économique New Brunswick, Chambers of Commerce of Moncton, St. John, Fredericton, Union of Municipalities, Association francophone des municipalités, Société de l'Acadie New Brunswick, and all the staff at MBMC for making this possible. So I hope this session was helpful for those who are looking for further information on immigration and population growth platforms and get a sense of where your candidates and the different parties stand on these policies. Merci encore et bonne journée à tous.